Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me on another of my amazing interviews. Today, I'm going to be talking to a lovely lady called Liz Phillips. She's from the Freedom Digital Broadcasting, and we're going to be discussing now you may have heard of the Great Reset. Oh, I can hear the boos and the hisses. Well, we're going to be talking about the Great Resist. And that's where we want to hear all the cheers. Liz, welcome to the show. It's lovely to have you on today. Now, before we get going into the Great Resist and all of that, we had a little preamble like we always do on these sort of things. And you were telling me about an occurrence that you happen to have with your bank. And I'm very interested in getting any of these sort of things out to the wider public. So, first of all, hello and welcome to the show. And what happened?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, which is having me on. Last weekend, I have a credit card, which I don't use very often, and I don't run up a debt on it. I pay it off every month, which I know a number of people do. I'm lucky that, but they are useful. Last weekend, my statement came through, and I was just idly looking through it, and I see that I've got purchase interest on it. And I thought, well, this is strange because the payment was paid in full last month. Why have I got purchase interest? So I rang up on Monday morning and spoke to a gentleman who I don't think had quite got the script that for the questions that I was asking. We'll leave it like that. But I said to him, I've got purchase interest on here and I shouldn't have. Why have I got it? So he looked at it and he said, well, your payment didn't come through in time. It only came through at the beginning of the month. I said, that's absolutely rubbish. And I've actually got it here, Richard, in front of me.
Right.
And I have to pay by the 28th of the month. And a small amount is taken out by direct debit by the credit card company each month. And then I pay the balance to that for the account to be written off. So the small credit card payment was taken out, the bank payment was taken out on the 26th, and I paid the balance on the 27th. Quite clearly says,
You don't want to give your numbers away, no?
I can just tell you that I have got it here.
Yes.
So I said, why have I got interest? And he said, well, we have so many payments coming in at that time in the month. Please, could you pay earlier? Because actually it didn't hit our account till the 1st or 2nd of June. I said, I most certainly cannot. And I said, I wish to have that amount taken off. He said, well, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I said, put me through to management. I said, you're the biggest crooks on the planet, you bankers, and put me through to management. Anyway, I was waiting about 5 minutes. The said gentleman came back and said, we're taking the interest off. And I'm only telling you this, Richard, because I think everybody needs to check their statements. If it had gone to court, it quite clearly says the dates that this was paid. And, the fact that they can't upload or whatever they do till the early part of the following month is not my problem.
No, absolutely. And if they've got, people are paying at the end at that particular period, it seems, because they all want to pay on time because nobody wants to incur any extra charge. And if they're not set up to deal with that, they shouldn't offer the service.
No, I mean, in fairness, it was £5.07. But why should I pay a credit card company £5.07, which, first of all, I don't owe? And if you think about what other people may have had as interest on their accounts, but for exactly the same reason, it's the only reason I'm bringing it up. But that happened at the beginning of the week. So at £5.07, I am better off.
It is.
Or I wasn't.
No, absolutely. And I was just going to say, it's very wise to look at your statements because being self-employed, I had to go through my statements to see where I've spent the money. And one year, I discovered I'd been paying somebody else's car insurance. And if I wasn't, and it was, several £100s, and I was paying mine, I was doing my accounts, and I thought, oh, this is weird. I'm paying this particular company twice, only two different amounts. And as I was totting it all up, I queried it. They gave me the money back and they were very apologetic, but for pretty much 10 months, somehow they had cocked up and there it was coming out of my account. So it's very worthwhile looking at your statements because you never know what you're paying for.
I don't actually mind paying anybody else's bill, but I do hate paying anything to the bank.
Yes.
Other than what I actually owe. I'm not best pleased with any of our banking system is what has got us into the situation we've got ourselves into now. They've been crooks for so many years. And so yes, so there we go. But I thought I'd just share that little story.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Liz. So let's find out a little bit about the Great Resist then, because this is something that you've been organised. You actually asked if I would do 10 minutes. Unfortunately, I'm the other, well, not the other end of the country. Well, I am the other side of the country. I'm over in Southend that particular morning, and so I can't get over to Newport, I think it is, in Wales. And so you very generously allowed me to send in a video. But can you tell us what it is?
Well, we're all the Great Resist is the people's answer to the Great Reset.
Right.
So it's for ordinary individuals, small organizations or large organizations worldwide, Richard, not just in this country, but we all need to get together. And I was very pleased to see you had the Great Rising on here the other day, two very nice gentlemen. We're not in any way in any form of competition with anybody, anybody that's doing anything to resist. What we know is coming down the line, is absolutely wonderful in my book. So please don't think for 1 minute that we're not a political party fighting everybody else. We're all fighting on the same side for a change, if you know what I mean.
Mm. And
So
this is fantastic to bring all these different groups together and but allow each one to be doing its own separate thing at the same time.
Absolutely. And what we'd like them to do is come under the Great Resist banner. But I don't want anything to do. We don't want money. That isn't the situation. We just want a huge swell of people. So if you've got a very small group, and there are a number of small groups in Wales that meet, if they met under one banner, suddenly they can do their own little bit, but then they all come together. And instead of having 5 or 10 people, you've got 30 or 40. And then people can see what other people are doing, Richard. And so we're starting a website as well, obviously, to cope.
Mm.
And on the website, we're also making it a one-stop shop so that if you want to look up about the World Economic Forum, the UN agendas, the Trilateral Commission, of which our own dear Sir Keir Starmer is a member. So you wonder why there's no opposition in Parliament. I could go on about the dear gentleman for a long time, but I won't.
No.
All these big organisations that we call them globalists. Elite is not the word I would use. I'd use a lot of other words, but elite isn't one of them. But they are the globalists who are now ruling our governments. You've got the Bilderbergers, all sorts of these shadowy organisations that have really taken over our governments. And so, what we're there to do is anybody that is resisting in any way, either individually or small groups or large groups, and worldwide, because we can all learn from each other.
Mm.
And the other interesting thing is that speaking at the conference will be Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland representatives from organisations that are trying to keep the countries in the EU rather than the separatists who are trying to take, for instance, Scottish National Party, Plaid Cymru, trying to take the countries out of the UK. Did I say EU?
You
I
did
meant
say,
UK,
yes, you did
sorry.
say EU, but
I'm so used to coming out of the EU. I worked for Brexit for so long and for Nigel Farage and Gerard Batten that I got so used to saying the EU. No, to keep these countries in the UK,
yes.
because although we're fighting individually, we need to fight these people globally as well. And to keep the countries in is absolutely essential. And we've got Alistair McConaughey from Scotland, the David Vance, who many people know, as with Alistair, they've got their own television programs, etc. They broadcast all the time, and Jason Lloyd Davis from Wales. So we've got the three trying to keep the UK united, which is absolutely essential.
And so, what is the event itself? Because it takes place on the 24th, if I've got that right.
It does indeed. It starts at 12 o'clock in the Neon Centre in Newport, South Wales, a wonderful centre where there's every facility you could possibly wish for us for filming, etc. And also there's a bar and a restaurant, not a restaurant, but bars for food, etc. And it was an old cinema. It's been beautifully done. So it's a wonderful, wonderful venue, 5 minutes from the railway station in Newport. And we, as I say, an old cinema. And we start at 12 o'clock. And really, it is all the different organisations giving 10 minutes of very positive, feedback onto not just what the problems have been, but the solutions, Richard. This is what we're majoring on. We want to have the most positive day so that we know where we're going and we know that we can win this terrible globalist view of the world, because they're hell bent on destroying the us and the earth, as far as I can see. And I think you and I both share the same views in that respect.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, they're conning us by telling us that it's all for our good benefits, that they're, very, very concerned about the earth because of man-made global warming and the net zero and all these initiatives which have words like sustainable and diversity and these sort of mealy-mouthed words that really you question what it actually means. And it really means building a prison and sticking us in it.
Absolutely, and we've got wonderful speakers. We've got Peter McElvenna from Hearts of Oak talking about successful alternative media. We've got Godfrey Bloom, who many people remember because he was one of our MEPs from Yorkshire. Being a great Yorkshireman, he speaks in words of one syllable, and he's explaining the problems of digital currency that's coming down our route. We've got Roger Arthur, who is often writes in the Telegraph and writes in the Conservative Woman, which is nothing to do with the Conservative Party. If nobody's read it, he's doing climate change, and he is a climate. He's been a climate engineer in the past, so he's absolutely excellent on the knowledge of climate change, or not, whichever way you like.
Yes.
We've got Dr. Neil McRae, who many know, and he's going to be talking about demoralization. Now, Neil McRae was one of the most wonderful people during lockdown. He joined the Workers of England Union, if nobody knows him, and he took on behalf of the care home staff when they were being made redundant and what have you. They joined the Workers of England Union, and he took their cases. He's an absolutely wonderful one. So we've got the most wonderful speakers, and then we've got a lot of local speakers as well. You've had Kimberly Isherwood on, I think, on public child protection
Oh,
in
yes,
Wales.
that's right. Yes,
You've had her on. You've had Neil Petrie on, talking about is direct democracy the answer,
that's
and
right.
that's about the actual political side. I've banned political parties from speaking. We did have offers. I don't. This is the people, Richard.
Yes,
It's not the part. I'm so fed up with politics, and with the exception of 1 in 650, which is the one and only Andrew Bridgen. The rest should be turned out by Oliver Cromwell or an equivalent, and retired away from politics altogether. They do nothing for us, do they?
no, and it's interesting you say that because a lot of people are thinking, what do we do in terms of the next general election? Who are we going to vote for? How is it all going to be? And my attitude is quite simply to banish the lot of them, because none of them seem to have had anything to contribute. In fact, the worst, they seem to be much, much more showing their cards now and becoming more tyrannical and dictatorial. And if they were going to, at any point, have done anything useful, education, and fixing the migrant crisis, we would have seen some positive moves towards that. But all we do is have the same old manifestos with the same old tired promises and the same lies and nothing happening. So I'm quite happy to see them all vanish in a puff of smoke.
Well, of course, it's because they no longer run the country. And, they can put in a manifesto whatever they like. And sadly, people still believe that that's what they will carry out. But of course, it's not possible. And I have to tell you, Richard, I think we're agreed on this as well. Most of our MPs are either bought or thick, or in most cases, or some cases, I should say, both bought and thick. Because you talk to some, they've got no idea what's happening. I've just sent out issued about the changes that have been taken on by the Ministry of Defence. We're now working with the Germans regarding human augmentation. And I have to tell you that I think the last people that we should be getting into bed with with experimentation on humans is the Germans.
Mm.
And that's not to say that there aren't good Germans these days, but we don't have to look too far back in history as to see what they did in the 39, 40, 45 Second World War.
It's very
And
bad optics, as they say, isn't it?
so there's a huge program called Human Augmentation on the website of the Ministry of Defence. And, the MPs have got no idea that it was there, no idea at all. And this is where we're at.
Mm.
So I've got very little time for those that I'm afraid are in the halls of Westminster.
I agree. And my audience, I mean, through some of my monologues, I suggested to the audience in the early days when I was broadcasting, and I say early days, I mean earlier this year, because I'm still only a baby in all of this. And I was saying those people who are upset with the medical intervention that we had, write to your MP and ask them about it. And people did. And then they would share with me the response. And it was amazing to see perhaps 5 to 10 different letters from different MPs around the country, how much the script was identical. We believe in this product and it's safe and effective, and everyone the same. No one saying, well, actually it's interesting, you should raise that's interesting, your concern, I'll find out more. No one acting on behalf of their constituent, but just saying, no, we know better, now leave us alone. Nothing to see here.
They're an absolute disgrace. And when you look at it, I live a little bit further up the coast than you. I live in Kent, Richard, so I'm not very far from Dover. And when you hear all the rhetoric about we're stopping the illegal migrants coming over and what have you. What a load of bunkum! It's the best word I can use for it, and you'll think, I'm sure your audience will think of many more.
Yes.
But it is a complete load of bunkum. They've got no intention of stopping this. We managed to stop Hitler in the Second World War from coming over, and he was on the cliffs overlooking from France, overlooking here. And we can manage to stop Hitler, but we can't stop a couple of dinghies. Don't tell me. It's absolutely outrageous.
Well, the thing that really outrages me is that our government is quite happy to lock us in our rooms and prevent us from going out into parks and breathing country air and sitting on park benches. But so they're happy to do that and capable of, and having swarms of police and drones and what have you. But they're incapable of stopping these boats where they know where they're coming from. They're pretty aware what time they're coming from, and they're towing them in or bringing them in. And you just think this is totally wrong, totally mad. And if anyone believes that that's by mistake or that it's by accident, then I think they're in cloud cuckoo land.
Yeah, absolutely. All the treaties that we've signed up to. It needs a few of us in Parliament, Richard, I'm afraid, to say, right, no. I didn't altogether agree with Maggie on many, many things. And I'm not a Labourite or a Conservative, really. Probably common sense, I think, comes into it. But in some cases, no is the right answer. And we need to stop all this. But the great resist, therefore, is for people to all come together. And we've got people talking about free speech, which is so important. We've got others. We've got the Fourth Industrial Revolution, talking about the Internet of Things, going into the Internet of Bodies, making the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And that is with the great Nicholas Martin. If anybody's not heard Nicholas, he's absolutely wonderful to listen to. And so we've got a Stand in the Gap with Mark Edwards. I think it was God wanted somebody to stand in the gap in the hedge. Now we're the gap in the hedge, if you like, to resist. So we've got somebody. So we've got such a great variety, but all very positive. And we'll all have a smile on the day. I can't go through life without having a smile somewhere. And dear old Corporal Jones in Dad's Army says they don't like it up 'em. And my usual way is they don't like it up 'em, but if you get it up 'em, twist.
Yes, very good. I like that.
So we have a great deal of fun while we're at it, but we are, it is deadly serious. But it's giving people a voice. Shouldn't be. None of us are needed really if the people in Parliament did their job, Richard. we should none of us be needed and having to spend all our pension monies and what have you fighting all of this. But you tell me who's standing up for us. Is the church? Is the medical profession? Are those in Parliament?
Mm.
How we were persecuted by the police. All of us peaceful people listening to doctors and virologists and epidemiologists talking in the centre of Trafalgar Square, we were attacked viciously. It took me 6 months to walk properly after being, I was only badly bruised down to the bone in the hip and what have you. It wasn't broken, but seriously, we were actually physically attacked for just standing there. We weren't in the middle of a road, sat down, gluing ourselves and stopping traffic. It's absolutely outrageous.
And we mustn't forget this. I mean, that's the thing,
No,
but the thing with the whole debacle is that we must not have short memories and think, oh, well, that was then, this is now. That is an absolute atrocity that people who also have families in this country and children and grandparents who dress up in uniforms and would attack their own on the behest of the state, which is, I mean, if I was at school I did go to school in the 1970s, and I read that in a book and think, no, that would never happen. Why would we be attacking our own? I can understand when it was the Second World War and people in military from the Germany coming over. That's a different thing because it was still within people's memories as such. But and it's so important we don't forget how we've been treated by the people in uniform and how demoralized in a way, or how indoctrinated rather, they have become, thinking that they've got all this power to do it to us.
yes. And, I actually complained, as did a number of people, because we were hurt at the time. And we went through a great rigmarole through the police. And of course, they come out in favour of themselves. And they said, but I could appeal. I could appeal to Sadiq Khan. And I wasted hours and hours and hours putting paperwork together and what have you. I thought, yeah,
Yeah.
that really is,
Appeal
the end
to
of the
there's a man with a lot of sympathy for the people, isn't there? He's what
absolutely,
a hero he is. He's like the
absolutely.
Gandhi, I
I
don't
know.
think.
No, quite. And to end up, we've got the great Calvin Robinson.
Oh,
Now,
have
we
you?
know about the church, and unfortunately, like you, Richard, for a completely different reason, he can't be with us. But he's sending us off. And and this is in no way religious in many ways, but there is something more. We all understand that it's good versus evil. So whatever you believe, it's goodness that's got to beat evil. So Calvin is going to send us out on a high note. It will be a video recording from him, but it's certainly he's such a charismatic character, as I'm sure
Mm.
you've seen him. And we need people in the church. We've got 116 bishops, and there's only one that has stood up against the things that happened. The churches were all shut. Well, go back again to Germany. What happened? If you look at any totalitarian regime, the first thing they do is shut down any form of religion. And so, you can see it all happening,
Yes. And should they
really.
try those tricks again, I think people will be much more inclined now to bash the doors down and keep them open.
Well, quite. If you look at, did you ever see on Rebel News the great Arthur Pawlowski from Canada, pastor, and he threw out the police on Good Friday. The police came in to shut him down on Good Friday. He literally threw them out.
Good for
And I
him.
thought if only had pastor, he's ended up in prison, and his brother, for their belief. You want to look at the Reverend, not the Reverend, the pastor Arthur Pawlowski. He was a Pole, so he knows all about totalitarianism
Yes.
and communism, etc. And he literally threw them out. It's a fantastic video. But over here, what do? We shut all the doors.
Yes.
And I learned yesterday that you'll love this, and your viewers will love this. I learned the vicars all had a notice from on high come round to say that they could enter their churches for maintenance, but they weren't to pray while they were there. So I said, so they could go in for maintenance, and when they stood up for maintenance, the virus didn't get them. But if they knelt down, it did. Is
Yes,
that what you're trying to tell me? That's
yes.
exactly what happened. They were told they could go into the church for maintenance only, but they were not to pray.
So if
Seriously.
they went down on that, so of course on all those situations, you just wonder if there was a vicar with dwarfism. I wonder what he would do because he's pretty low, and the virus must be going. Oh, hang on, he's walking, or is he kneeling? And oh, we're confused because how intelligent this virus was that it could work out those people sitting down in a pub. Oh, mustn't touch those. But the people at the bar, oh yeah, we can get them. Only they've got those super duper protective masks that there's no way we could possibly get in, apart from all the holes and round the sides and any way which. And most people have got them under their chins anyway.
But the sad thing is, why did the priests or the vicars accept? Why didn't they rebel?
Well, that's the question you could ask about all these people, could you not? The doctors, the nurses, the undertakers, the marriage conductors, whatever you call them. Well, they would be the priests again, and all the services that just sort of went, oh, okay. Everybody just acquiesced, apart from a very, very small. I've just interviewed a chap who opened his gym during the lockdowns, and because he knew members of his gym were so depressed, and one of them had committed suicide, and he thought, well, I can't have this. I'm going to open the gym and let people in, and now it's something like £60,000 in debt because of the court cases and stuff to try and say, but he was doing something. He asked permission all the way through, and then afterwards they decided, nope, the legal system, the biggest fraud, went completely against him, and they're just trying to ruin him, as they're trying to ruin all independent businesses. And
Well, you'll love this, and it won't really affect you, Richard. And don't take this the wrong way. But when lockdown started, I interviewed a wonderful chap who was a barber. Now, many people, if their hair gets all long and straggly, get depressed as well. I can't stand it. If it starts to cool down and you get very hot and sticky and horrible, I can't stand it. And so he opened his barber shop, and Kings Hill Barbers in West Malling, and a wonderful chap, and in he came. Well, they all came after him in some big order, and he just opened. He'd been a barber most of his life. He just opened his own salon, put all this money in. It's so cruel and so wrong, isn't it?
I mean, and so unnecessary.
Yeah, it
And
would be.
there was no proof to say that these people were at risk, and there was no cost benefit analysis made for the lockdowns. So we know all this. So it's so important that we don't forget any of this, and we keep that constant in our mind, because if they try something like that again, we need to be able to go, hang on a second, we've been here before and it didn't work out well. So let me ask you, one of the things I get from my viewers when I was at, say, the Better Way conference or these other events that are going on, people get very high, they get very empowered, they're very positive, and then they go away and they're back on their own again, and they're starting to go, but what can I do? And the old habits start, they switch on the television and all these sort of things. How do we keep the empowerment, that feeling? How do we keep the vibrations high?
Well, we are going to continue this with the several subjects that we haven't covered here. We haven't covered 5G. We haven't covered what's happening in agriculture. So there's lots of things we haven't covered. So what we want to do is take this around the country, Richard, and so that other people have got can carry on. And if we can get these small groups to go together, to have meetings, have their own small meeting, and with another group that's having its meeting, and then get together. I think this way we'll start to move people. The other thing that I did when I started with UKIP, and before that the referendum party, we started from naught, as you know, because I started right back on day one,
Yes.
to government back to the UK, out of Brussels, and I went to the WIs and went to talk to the WIs, and they're totally apolitical, so you can't tell them what to do or who to vote for. but you can start talking to organisations about what is happening. They're always desperate for speakers. And I found the WI, everybody thinks it's Jam and Jerusalem and, old ladies knitting and whatever. It's one of the most forward thinking organisations in the country. And so I think the other thing to do is to start talking to organizations about the work that we all do. So, and again, if you can say it's under one umbrella, but go in it with your organization and say, well, we're part of the Great Resist, the Great Rising, I don't mind, we all come together,
Mm.
but we're part of this, and this is, the movement that we're doing, and all these other people are doing as well, so that other organizations, Richard, that are have probably got no idea really of all the things that are to befall them. Because if they only watch the mainstream media, which still a lot of people do, they've got no idea.
Yes. No, absolutely. And one of the excuse me, one of the problems I've found is if people start to wake up and they've been watching mainstream media and they start to go to alternative media, YouTube platforms, Rumble and Odyssey, etc., it's very easy to get lost in some quite hard-hitting stuff, which then appears, even though it's truthful on the whole, it can be very easy to become more frightened than what the mainstream media is doing. And I think that's something that the alternative media needs to be a bit more aware of, because you can turn people off just as they've started to be awake. And that's, I think that's an element where you go, well, is this true? This is too bizarre for me to cope with. And I think where I've managed, not by design, just by happenstance really, I've tried to be almost like I should be on the BBC, but I'm not talking about the BBC things. And I'm a bit more mild, measured, and as professional as I can be.
Yes, no, you're quite right. I think we've had some great people that started off when the movement started, sort of back in 2020, 2019, 2020, that came at it with everything, all guns blazing all at once. And for some, it was like, oh, you're only conspiracy theorists. But of course, we're not. And all the things that were said then have come to fruition.
Mm.
But it did turn a lot of people off because it did frighten them, and they thought, well, these people are nutters. So I'm like you, Richard. We've been very careful to talk in measured way and prove what we can do. But I always say, don't take my word for it. Don't take our guest's word for it. I mean, you talk about 5G, it makes most people's hair stand on end, and they're really terrified. But you have to do it in a measured way so that people understand and are prepared.
Mm.
And I think that's all we can do. I've never ever tried to tell people who to vote for or what to do, but I've just said, whatever I say, go and check,
Yes.
because I'm pretty careful about what we say and how we go about it.
Well, I'm very excited that you're going to take this on the road and bring it to very many more things. And I think that, and presumably relatively close together, because the Better Way conference was very good. It's just it now seems to be an annual thing. And if you didn't go this year, you've got to wait a year. Now, we may not have a year. That's the thing.
This juggernaut that is coming towards us is coming very, very fast. And it's no good saying, well, we'll wait for the general election.
Mm.
Well, it's going to be a toss-up unless we're very, very clever. It's going to be a toss-up between the two parties, neither of whom have got any concern for their constituents at all. So we can, but it isn't any good. And we can't wait that long. This is why we're doing it all now.
Mm.
And we'll move it round and move the speakers round so that and we've got some excellent local speakers in every area. They're wonderful, Richard. You've had many of them on. I've had many of them on from all sorts of different walks of life that will get on and speak. So if we move it round, we get a couple of well-known speakers that people can, hang their hats on, and then the rest will be good local speakers who are all doing their bit to make sure that the Great Reset does not happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's a website to go along with this. Will there be any videos that are posted from the event, so if people can't get to the first one, I can catch
Yes.
up and see what's going on?
we'd like to see as many people as possible. It's on the Neon website, NEON website, Newport. It's a £5 for the day. We've had to make a small charge. I'm sorry. We would love as many people there as possible. But yes, it is all being filmed. It should be being live streamed. It's all being filmed as well. And also, we're hoping to get a really good package together so people can take away leaflets from the organisations that are running, so that people have got a grasp and they can go back into their own. We've got people coming from Sussex, Richard, where I know you're coming from.
Yes.
We've got people coming from East Anglia, we've got people coming from the Midlands, so they can go back into their communities to see what they're doing and say, Liz, we're doing this up here. Let's bring these people in as well, so that we get everybody on the same side. And also, as I say, it's not just for this country; it's worldwide, because I broadcast all over the world, and I work with people all over the world. So places like New Zealand are having the most torrid time.
Mm-hmm.
Australia, Canada. So we've got people, with small organisations that are kicking back there, and of course they're so isolated. When you think of poor old New Zealand, it's practically off the end of the planet.
Yes.
And they're not very big. They're having a torrid time down there. And you look at agriculture, which is what we are going to do in the next. We're going to look at it in depth in the next meeting that we go to. But if you look at places like Holland and New Zealand, where farms are being taken away compulsorily, it's just outrageous. It's famine on the way, folks. And you've talked about this, so we won't. But we've got to fight with them. And it's no good just thinking that they're in New Zealand. We've all got to fight. So, as one global unit of individuals all coming together.
Yes. And I mean, sometimes I think to myself, what an amazing time to be alive, because that we are going to be forging change. It's not all going to be fun and games, of course, although we want to keep everything light. But I suppose what I'm realizing more and more is it's a time for purpose. We've in the past you've just sort of had your life, and the purpose was to pay the bills, to get through, to get the kids educated, and it was all quite insular. Whereas now I feel this purpose is a huge calling to so many people to help humanity. And, we're on the right side of history, I do believe. And as a result of that, it is exciting. There's trepidation, because we know we're not just playing with kids. These are very well expert foes that we have to deal with. But we have the advantage that there's more of us than there are of them. And a bit like skirmishes in a way, you can't plan for those. And so we can have the upper hand in many different ways. That's what I think. Even though they may have, used their computer models to work out, we can do this and we can do that and we will win and everyone will have nothing and be happy. And they might like to think like that. But I think they've got...
Well, I put it this way, Richard. We've got one on our side up that way. We've got one on our side that they haven't got.
Yes.
And, provided we fight, we'll win. And I don't mean fight fisticuffs wise, you know what I mean. Providing we fight back.
If we don't just sit back and let it happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I haven't mentioned, of course, we've got the Free Libertarians group in South Wales. Somebody speaking from them. And Students Against Tyranny, the great James Harvey. Sadly, he can't be with us, but he's giving us a video for the day as well. If you haven't interviewed James Harvey, what a wonderful young man.
Yes, do give me his details.
So many students across the country are so scared to speak up. They don't get their papers marked now. If they're if they speak up against any of this, they're not getting their papers marked. So they don't get their degrees. It's really serious. I can't tell you how serious. So there are wonderful people, of all ages. It's not just the old focus.
Yes. Well, this is something that we need to see much more. And I understand why now, because you've just explained. But this is something we definitely need to see more of. But I mean, I've given a few talks, and they're mostly middle-aged people who understand and perhaps are approaching retirement, got part-time jobs, got more time to get involved. But those whose careers are absolutely on the line, and excuse me, and are awake and can see it, but they, as you've just explained, they don't know where to go, how to put their case forward, how to complain, who to complain to, what they can do. These are the people that, in many ways, it's the next generation who will be doing the biggest battle, I think, and putting things right once we've pushed back. These guys need as much support, and we need to acknowledge that there are perhaps more of them awake than we give credit to.
Yes, they're just scared to speak. I think where we're very lucky, Richard, some of us that started with the referendum party or UKIP, we started from naught. The one thing it taught us to do was how to fight. And, we had all the mainstream media against us, if you remember. There was a poll done on the BBC, which was 92% for Remain and 8% for Brexit. There was an analysis done, rather, of their programmes by Newswatch, an independent review body. And when they reviewed the BBC's propaganda, well, propaganda is the only word for it, 92% for Remain and 8% for Brexit. And who won? The good old British worker has got more in his up here, up in the top story, all of the intelligentsia put together. So I'm very hopeful. But we are for really it's for the individual small organisation to all get together now and say, in whichever way we're all fighting this together.
Absolutely. Well, Liz, thank you so much for telling us about the event on the 24th of June. If you can get there, it would be fantastic. It's at the Neon Centre, is that right?
It's the Neon. Yes, it's the Neon, Clarence Avenue in Newport. The doors open at 11. It's from 12 till 6, 5 minutes from the railway station. Wonderful day. And I promise everybody, you'll go away feeling, really very, very much better. If you don't, you can come after me and blame me at the end. But I know who's speaking,
Yes.
including yourself, Richard. I've had a wonderful, you've fitted what I've asked you to do absolutely to that. You've nailed it.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's good to know.
So I'm just sorry, but we'll get you live at another one because we've got to move this round.
Yes, absolutely. And if you can't go, then you can find out more. Is there the website up and running to go, or will it be?
We're putting the last bits to it, Richard, at the moment. But certainly, if you go onto Freedom Digital Broadcasting, it'll all be on there.
Right.
And of course, the previews and what have you will be on YouTube and the usual ones, Rumble, BitChute, etc.
Odyssey, etc.
So
Yeah.
the preview is on there for you to pick up and to go on to us. So it's fine.
So yeah, just keep looking for the Great Resist, and
That's
you
it.
can't go wrong. Liz, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us about it. I'm sorry I can't be there. Really want to, because not only do I want to be there and try and help where I can, but also meet some of those fantastic speakers who will be there. But it would be lovely to get involved in some of the others. I'm very much up for that. And so I wish you well with the event on the day. It's going to be very exciting. I shall catch up with it afterwards online. But there we are, ladies and gentlemen, Liz Phillips from Freedom Digital Broadcasting. Get all the information from that. I'll ask Liz to send me the link to the webpage there so people can get that. It'll be in the description, of course. And I will be back doing my usual monologues and interviews as ever. But in the meantime, big thanks to Liz and a big good luck to everything. I'm just trying to find where the off button is here. A big good luck on everything. And thank you very much for all you do. And it will be a wonderful event. So from Liz and I, thanks, Liz.
Bless you. Thank you for having me on. And good luck, everybody.
And until next time, from me and Liz, goodbye.